Okay, I guess we can start. This is a presentation on fog readers, and our speaker is Maricela Leon-Barrera. So take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today for this presentation, which is about helping struggling readers succeed, the Fog Readers program in the pandemic and beyond. My name is Maricela Leon-Barrera, and I am the literacy manager at the San Francisco Public Library. I've been a librarian for about 15 years now, but I started my career in library as a volunteer and a library page. In between there, I pursued a teaching credential and really enjoyed teaching first grade. In my library career, I've served all ages, including adults, teens, and children. And previously to my current role as literacy manager, I was the early learning coordinator and helped support bring the Storytime program online during the pandemic. The topic of literacy is really near and dear to me, and I've had this current role for about a year now. I'm really excited to talk to you about fog readers, which is, and it's at its core, a reading intervention for elementary age students in grades 1 through 4. And I will talk to you about what the program is like, how it works, the virtual transition to of offering it online, and now the dual implementation models that exist, which is both in person and virtual. So what is the Fog Readers program? It is a reading intervention program that was established in 2016 and developed by our Learning Differences librarian, Laura Lay. It is a structured literacy approach with Orton Gillingham methodology. In 2018, it won the ULC Top Innovator Award. And the reason it was started was because the librarian, Laura Lay, noticed that there was a steady influx of parents really concerned with their children's reading development. And this is not only something that was noticed by her, but also noticed by other librarians with parents coming in and asking for reading support. She had a background in this area, and she developed a structured literacy program rooted in Orton Gillingham. And Orton Gillingham is an approach that actually was developed by Samuel Orton, who was a neuropsychologist and a pathologist, and Anna Gillingham, who was an educator and a psychologist, who developed the teaching materials. And so they together developed a program that is very characterized by being direct, explicit, and is sequential in its instruction, and is best done in one-on-one or small groups. It is actually considered one of the best approaches for students who have dyslexia. And at San Francisco Public Library, we implement it as a one-on-one tutor volunteer to student model. The need exists because we know from research and we know from hearing from parents and families that students who fall behind and don't get support rarely catch up to their peers. We can see this from this image here. This was created by Nancy Young. It was created in 2012 and updated in 2017. That 50 to 65% of students need a structured literacy approach. Those most needing support are oftentimes students who have dyslexia, and dyslexia affects about 20% of the population and represents about 80 to 90% of learning disabilities. It is one of the most common neurocognitive disorders. And for parents seeking help for students who are behind or have fallen behind or have some sort of learning difference, interventions of this kind can cost anywhere from $80 to $100 an hour. And as you can imagine, being working families in San Francisco, that cost is prohibitive. It is just really difficult to access any additional support other than what the school can provide. And this concerns a lot of our families. How does the program work? The program goal is to move students away from skipping or guessing words. Oftentimes, this is a strategy. It's a strategy that is taught in schools for students to be able to get through the content that they're reading, but it oftentimes doesn't work. It doesn't work, especially if they are presented with words in isolation. So this program focuses on students who are in grades 1 through 4. And the reason that we focus on those grades is because traditionally in the educational system, reading is taught in first grade, and that is when students really learn how to read. Past third grade, they learn to read for knowledge. So in the beginning grades, it's really important that they get the instruction that they need in order to be able to learn how to read, so that they read to learn later on in their educational trajectory. In the San Francisco Public Library, students and tutors meet once a week, either at a San Francisco Public Library location or online. And this is a very important note, because it's really important that there is a strong library connection if they're going to be meeting in person, and they get the benefit of also being able to be surrounded by a print-rich environment and access to a librarian. But for some families, online and some tutors, online is an important option to provide them, because of what, their lives are busy, and or they have a lot of things going on. But even so, we really focus with tutors as we're training them to have that library connection. So when they are we're talking about reading and they're doing the reading part of the program, we encourage them to use our library ebooks. So we do include that as part of our training. Tutors use the FOG Readers curriculum, and that is an important key part of the program, because unlike tutoring or reading with kids for support or additional just reading time, this program is actually provides them instruction on how to decode. Tutors go through 7.5 hours of training, and they go through a processing of volunteers, and then they get matched. And the way that we get the students is that the parents refer students to the program. You might be wondering, what is the key components of making sure that you have a skilled reader? And it really falls on two things to become a skilled reader. Being able to decode text, which means being able to understand what the words on the page mean, and what the words are, and then also being able to comprehend what is the meaning of those words. When you're able to decode words effectively, it will lead you to understanding. And oftentimes this is called reading comprehension. And when we're talking about what is it does this sound like when we hear it in schools? And we look at this chart. This is Scarborough's reading rope. Decoding is actually three principal parts. So phonological awareness, phonics, and sight recognition. And comprehension has to do with background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. In the FOG Readers program, we really focus on the decoding aspect of reading, and we do some of the comprehension through the reading practice. The approach is that it puts a very strong emphasis on understanding the how and the why behind reading. We break reading and spelling into smaller skills involving letter sounds, and builds these skills over time. So we really start at letter sound correspondence. We want to make sure, for example, that all the students understand what sounds the letter make. We focus on what are the short vowel sounds, and how they how do they work in words. We will focus on syllables. So when you see a large word, how do you break it apart into smaller, more manageable pieces? We focus on the sounds, and FOG Readers program is specifically focused on English language. So it's something that we explain to parents that even if they're in an immersion program or a program that is teaching an additional language, this particular program will help their English language development. And another key piece of this program, and when we teach it to tutors, is that we encourage using multisensory techniques. So this means being able to bring in ways in which students can incorporate movement or sound, or for example, I mentioned the breaking apart of words into syllables, clapping syllables out, because it helps support drive in that this is an important aspect of learning how to break apart a word. The Fog Readers program actually has 5 levels. All students start at level 1. And the reason is because we want to ensure that there's no gaps in their foundational skills. You can see here from this graph that level 1 focuses on basics, so letter sounds, blends, syllable types, and patterns. It moves on to level 2, which is vowel teams, decoding, and affixes. Level 3 is more vowel teams, Latin affixes, and contractions. And so it just keeps moving on to eventually it starts looking more at morphology and how words are made up, like what are the roots of some words. And then by level 5, we're really focusing on that, like making sure that that fluency and comprehension is there. The curriculum is more robust at the first 2 levels. And the reason is because that is really where we want to make sure that the students have all the tools that they need to make sure that they become good decoders and develop automaticity in decoding. I've just talked a lot about the program itself, and I want to show you some images of some of our beautiful students and their tutors and how it looks in action. And so here we have some pictures that were actually taken pre-pandemic of our tutors working in the library with their students, either reading together or talking about what it is, the words that they might be doing some spelling practice with. And so we hear wonderful feedback from both parents and tutors about this and how much this time is very special for a lot of the students, and that it's something that they're learning, being able to learn to become more confident readers. In 2019, so this is pre-pandemic, we had 266 students who had been tutored, but we had over 300 students on the wait list. The program at that point was growing and recruiting tutors to meet demand. There was tutor trainings every month, and on average about 30 tutors in each training. And we were full steam ahead. It was something that was happening and that we were really excited about, to see the growth and see that this was actually meeting the need. And in 2020, as we all experience in our lives, there was the upheaval and the pairs could no longer meet at libraries. And so we really had to figure out what the COVID response was, because up until then, the program was in person only. Students met at the library with their tutors for 1 hour, and it worked. We knew that worked. But in 2020, the libraries had to close their doors, as many other places did. And so the first thing was, what is it that SFPL had to provide existing pairs to support them and to continue and preserve the pairs? And also looking on the horizon of what impact the COVID slide, or the fear of the learning loss that was going to be happening, was going to impact the program. And so converting to virtual really was accomplished by assembling a team of San Francisco Public Library librarians who were recruited to lead the program through the pandemic. They really got together to support existing pairs and move the program to virtual. And that meant encouraging tutors to look at Zoom as a platform in order to provide the program. Looking at the online e-resources that the library had to provide the reading material. In this time, the lead staff here pictured was trained up in the methodology. So they went through training to help them understand what is Orton Gillingham about and how is it that you provide it. And they adapted the training that, like I mentioned, was in person to a online format. So being able to provide it as an online offering. And by late 2020, by November 2020, there was a push for volunteer tutors made through our library contact list. And there was many tutors who came up to be able to support the waiting students and the new students who signed up for the program in this time. So in 2020, December, they launched a virtual training. They reached out to the existing wait list and were able to whittle it down. They matched students with tutors, and they mailed supplies to student homes to be able to provide them the opportunity to engage in the program and engage with their tutors. Some quick numbers here. So since December of 2020, there have been 364 tutors trained and over 180 matches made. And this is an important thing to note, which is in the interim, students come into the program, and some students graduate from the program. And so then we have sort of a rematching process for tutors who are interested in continuing with the program. And so that 180 is a number that's always in flux. And also to note that in the beginning of 2021, the FOG team did have to return to their regular roles, but the FOG Readers program was, thanks to all their work, has been able to weather the storm and be able to continue on into this present time. So currently what we look like is we have two models. As of January of 2022, we invited interested tutor pairs and also interested tutors and families who want an in-person experience again, that they were welcome to come back into the library. A lot of this was timed with the COVID situation and any health mandates that we had going on. But at that point, we felt comfortable letting people know that they were welcome to continue their tutoring in person. And we did have many families who took us up on it. Many tutors who were interested to try the program in person who previously had only been online. But interestingly enough, the online offering still is very popular. And so we're running about 50-50. For some families and tutors, online is the way. And for some families and tutors, they love the in-person model. So currently we have about 150 active pairs, and we get about 150 signups yearly. The sign up number oftentimes goes up or down depending on what's going on in schools. That sometimes, for example, we see an uptick around parent-teacher conference time. But it is definitely a beloved program, and we are very excited to be able to offer it and be able to share about it. And I wanted to share a parent's feedback, which is I am delighted and grateful that FOG Readers was able to assist Genesis through these years. She struggled with reading, and thanks to her FOG tutor, she is now able to read books without a problem. I appreciate everything Tutor Rachel did for Genesis, and she was always so kind and an extraordinary tutor. And this is just one piece of feedback. We get oftentimes parents who just absolutely love the program and tell their friends about it. And so that it shows that it's valued and loved. I want to leave you with a quick quote that I always leave with the tutors, especially after they've gone through tutor training. And that is that it takes a big heart to shape little minds. And the reason I share this with them is because the work that we do every day is we all handle a lot, and we're asking our tutors to do a lot, but it's really making an impact in their lives. And so I often see libraries in that role of us being able to impact everyone, putting a little bit to be able to make a big impact. If you would like to ask me any questions, this would be the time, or you're welcome to email me. I know that I gave you guys a lot of information and spoke very fast, but given the time that we have, I wanted to make sure that I was able to give you a snapshot of what the program is like.
Okay, so I guess the forum is open for questions. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Or if you want, you can just type the question in the chat too. I know that not everybody is, well, people are comfortable with different modalities. Any questions? I have a question. As we were chatting before, I live in San Francisco and I am considering volunteering for this program. What is the commitment and what are the volunteer retention rates?
So the commitment for tutors is you meet once a week for direct instruction with a student. And on average, what tutors report back is that they spend an additional hour either preparing their lessons or debriefing their lesson. They're making sure that some of them take notes after their sessions to help them plan for the next session. But it's about in total about 2 hours a week, I would say. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but that 1 hour is the hour that's with the student is always consistent and at the same time. The other hour for preparation could be whenever they want to fit it in. And in terms of our tutor retention, it varies. I mean, we have some tutors who will go one round with a student and oftentimes will stay with a student for maybe 2 years. We've had some that are longer and then they'll take a break and then ask for another student. And we have others who we ask for at least a 6-month commitment. They do their 6 months and then they write to us and say, thank you so much for the opportunity. The student still needs another tutor, or they find that the student was able to catch up and that they are confident readers at that point. And so at that point, we graduate the student. But yeah, tutor retention really varies for various reasons. But we're constantly recruiting because the need always keeps growing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Sally has a great question. Can volunteers who don't live in San Francisco specify that they'd like to tutor virtually?
So we have some tutors who may live in the outskirts of San Francisco who want to be FOG tutors. The one thing is that we do ask tutors who, so they might not live in San Francisco, but might live in the East Bay, for example. We do ask them that they have to live close enough where they can be fingerprinted, because something else that is important is to mention is that for us first, because when you're working with children, they have to be fingerprinted, and that is done through our Department of Human Resources here in San Francisco. So they have to come in person for that appointment. That even if they're virtual or not, every volunteer working with children has to be fingerprinted.
Mm-hmm. So any other questions? You can type it in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask away. No?
Well, if anyone has questions afterwards, they're welcome to email me. I can put it in the chat, but it's also going to be in the recording. And I don't know, I think there is also presenter information that's being shared. Also those who have registered for today's conference.
Yes. So thank you so much, Maricela, for sharing your work with the FOG program, and all the best of luck. It sounds like a very exciting time. All right.
Yeah.
So I will end the meeting if there are no questions, so that you all can make it to the next session that begins at 1:30. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.